Hello everybody and welcome to the Office 365 Lab series, starting today with the very first webcast in this whole series that spans across the month of September. As you may already be aware of, today we are gonna focus on using PowerShell to automate tasks. And this is a very important thing, especially if you are, let's say, a CSP partner, so a type of Microsoft partner that sells and supports Office 365 for their end customers. In this type of scenarios, or even if you handle a very large Office 365 environment, then it is wise in different circumstances to try to automate different tasks using PowerShell. And today we will see how we can do this and how can we automate some tasks on Azure Active Directory and also some tasks on Exchange Online. During all the other webcasts, for example, when we will discuss SharePoint Online and so on, we will also use some scripting, but we will concentrate on that when we discuss the certain service. But since Exchange Online and Azure AD have a really huge task automation opportunities, we will focus on these two services today in this webcast. However, before we get started, I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Dan and I am working as a partner technical consultant for Microsoft for almost 4 years now. And what I do, I mainly help our partners in pre-sale stages and answering how-to questions when they want to deploy Office 365 and generally Microsoft Cloud Services. So my main focus is on cloud services, and I'm really specialized more in Exchange Online and in cloud identity issues. Here you can see also the blog where you can see my blog where you can check out some articles. I write pretty regularly on topics related to Office 365 and in general the Microsoft Cloud Services, and you may also find me on Twitter. As you may know from the description, it is very important for this webcast series to know that we try to deliver this in a different way than what we did before. And that's why we won't basically have any PowerPoint presentation. What you see now, we have only a few introductive slides, but after that I will simply switch into live demo, and everything we'll do, we will show you directly how you can get things done in Office 365, so in Azure AD and Exchange Online. So no slides, really only hands-on approach. Here is a brief agenda of what we will discuss today. It's basically user management in Azure AD using PowerShell, of course, then license, because we have also to create the users, but also to assign them different licenses. And we will see exactly different scenarios where we can do that and how we can do that. And then we will switch to Exchange Online, where we also will see some sample scripts and how you can get things done in Exchange Online, especially when it comes to Mailbox properties and Exchange Online Mailbox permissions. So this being said, let me present my screen and let's then get it started as soon as possible. Okay, right now my screen is loading, and I think now everything should be visible here. And as you can see, I already have a Windows PowerShell session opened here. And when we want to automate different tasks on Office 365, the very first thing that we have to do is, of course, connect to the Office 365 services. And in doing that, I already have a script that I normally always use to create to connect to Exchange Online and Azure Active Directory automatically. What I have to do still is I have to provide my username and password for the global admin that I use. And this is what I am doing right now. Hopefully I'll get the password right. Usually always during demos I get my passwords wrong, because these are the live demos, and there is something that has to go wrong during live demos, always. I think you made the same experience. Okay, let's first clear the screen. And before going further, you saw that I used a script to connect to my Office 365 instance. And this is basically the very simple and easy script that I used in order to connect. So what I did in this script is basically first I created a variable for my credentials where I ran the get credentials. So basically in this PowerPoint session right now, my credentials are stored in this variable. So if I need these credentials again to connect to something or to simply provide them, then I can simply provide this variable and then this will create. Then the second part is very simple. I also created a variable for a session, because when we connect to Exchange Online, this is the part of the script that connects you to Exchange Online. It's very important to notice that you don't have to download and install a separate Windows PowerShell module for Exchange Online. What we do is simply we connect remotely to the Exchange Online PowerShell commandlets that are available in Exchange Online. And this is basically the way we connect to the PowerShell in Exchange Online. This is the URI that we use, and here we provide the credentials that are stored in this variable. And then of course we have to authenticate, and once this part of the script finishes, I am connected to Exchange Online. And of course I have to import the session in the current Windows PowerShell session that I run. And from this point basically I could run commands like get recipient or get Mailbox and see different properties on this type of resources. Further, in the second part of this script, let's say, I have to connect also to Azure AD. And Azure AD works a little bit different, because in order to connect to Azure AD, you need to first download the Azure AD Windows PowerShell module that you have to install on your computer from where you want to administer Office 365. And once this module is installed, you have to import it in the session, and then of course connect to Azure AD using this type of commandlets. And of course for my credentials, I will also provide my credentials that are already stored in this variable cred. And once this completed, I am basically connected both to Exchange Online and to Azure Active Directory. Now you might ask, okay, but is there any option to do this in a more automated way so that I don't have to provide my credentials anytime I run this script? And the answer is yes, and therefore I would like to present you with another script made by one of my colleagues. And what happens here in this script, it's also very easy. First of all, I have to create a notepad file in which I will store my credentials. So in this case, basically I will store only my password, and I will store it as a secure string. So basically when I do this and store a credential in this way in a txt file, when I open the txt file, you will see that there are a lot of characters and spaces and numbers without any logic, and this is basically the encrypted version of the password that I have provided. Then okay, I create a variable for my password in which I will store the txt file. So I have to provide the exact location of this txt file, and of course I would have to provide a way also to PowerShell to know in order that this file is a secure string, and it will have to convert it in order to be able to connect to the service. And basically what we do in this script further, it's exactly the same thing that we did also before, only that every time I have to provide my credentials, I would provide basically the values that are written down in this txt file. And once again, this is very, very secure, because since you open the file itself, you do not see any logic in this type of file, so the password is never, but really never, stored in plain text in this case. But remember, in order to do this, always use this type of parameter, because otherwise, if you don't use it, then the password will be stored in plain text, and this is really not very, very secure. Just as a short info, all these scripts that we will use today, and commandlets and so on, will be uploaded to a GitHub repository that I will make available to all attendees, and from there you can simply download all containing files as a zip file, and you will have really all scripts that we will use today, and also a CSV sample that we will see really only a little bit later in this webcast. So this being said, I think I can close these two notepad files since we don't need them anymore. And I would like to get directly to Azure AD. And the first scenario that I want to briefly discuss here is user creation. And why I would like to do this, because I had this type of scenario several times in the last couple of months when partners asked me, okay, how can we automate user creation? And especially when different companies, their end customers, wanted to move to the cloud from different on-premises systems or from other cloud providers. And I had the example where, for example, there was a company with around 100 employees, but they did not use Active Directory domain services. So user creation was not very easy in that case, because you couldn't simply synchronize the local Active Directory to Azure Active Directory, so we had to create users directly in the Office 365 Admin Center. And this is one way you can do. In the Admin Center, you have here the option import users. And in this case, you can also provide a CSV file, and users will be created. However, my experience shows that this type of procedure might run into different failures and problems that you will notice right away, or worse, that you will notice only, for example, next week or something like that, which is really not optimal. So in this way, we try to automate this by using by creating all these users using Windows PowerShell. And for doing that, I have prepared a CSV file, and this is how this sample CSV file should look like. I have the very first users that have a full name, a full display name with last name and first name. And then, of course, to make this easier, I have from user 1 to, I think, user 146 or something like that. Yeah, that's correct. So in total, we have around 151 users that we want to get created in Office 365. And I also got a question in other webcasts where I presented the same thing, and they said, okay, you can really automate this task, but in order to create the Excel file, you have to invest a lot of time. And yes, the answer, it could be true, but however, again, based on my experience, is that if a company has around 100 employees, even less if it has 50 or something, they need to have a kind of service or on-premise system or anything where they keep track of this type of resources, which are their users. So in most of the cases, there will be something like an HR tool used internally, and almost all such tools have the option to export into a CSV file. Of course, there might be not the case that the CSV export will give you a file really ready to upload to Office 365, but however, you would have the main information there in that CSV file. Maybe you just have to change some header some headers, like maybe they don't use a user principal name but username, so you can change the user principal name and so on. Here my conclusion here is that if we are able to export into CSV from a certain third-party tool, then our time investment in order to make this CSV uploadable in Office 365 will take less time than to create the CSV from scratch. And I have the CSV file, and now I have to run a commandlet in order to import this CSV file, and for each row in the CSV file to create a user. And yeah, we can see that users are starting to create right now. Here in the column is licensed, you can see everything on false because I chose not to assign a license to those users that are created right now. The main reason is very simple. I have a normal Office 365 E3 trial with only 25 licenses available, so I wouldn't have the option to assign to all these 151 users a license. So that's why is licensed is false. But till the users are created, let us take a brief look at how this commandlet looks like and what are the parts. So first of all, of course, we have to import the CSV file and provide a path to where exactly this CSV file is located. Then we have to use a pipeline. This pipeline in PowerShell is a very interesting tool. What it does, it takes all the outputs, all the results from what came out on the left side of the pipeline, and it handles all these results to be handled in what's coming right to this line. So in this case, we import the users from the CSV file, and we define that for each user, in this case for each object, this is the strict argument that Windows PowerShell uses, we will create a new MSOL user. So this is the commandlet to create a new MSOL user. And then we start to provide values. And what we will say here is basically that for user principal name, please take the value that you find in the CSV as a user principal name. For the first name, please take the value for the first name from the CSV. From the last name, exactly the same. And it's exactly the same for all these attributes that we have defined in this short script. Then the last thing that is very, very important is usage location, which I put for all users on US because I didn't have a column in the CSV with usage location, but you can create also a column for usage location. And in this case, this is very, very important because in order to assign a license to users, you have first to assign a usage location for those users. So because I will try to assign to those users a license shortly after, I also choose to provide a usage location US so that I can go directly to license assignment. So this is how users are created in bulk in Office 365. And we can see that all my users right now were created in Office 365. And we can see that for each user, we as an admin, we can export this type of results, of course, also to a CSV file or to a normal Excel file. And we can then provide for each user the temporary password that they can use in order to log in for the first time to Office 365. When they log in for the first time, they will be, however, prompted to change their password. So from that point on, they will have a password that only the respective user knows about. So all this process of creating 151 users basically took around 2 minutes. So it's really, really, really quick. Based on experience, I can also tell you that if you would have chosen to also assign a license to all these users within the same script, then the whole process would have taken around 4 minutes. So, however, it is very, very, very quick. But let's now get a step further, and let's assume in this scenario that maybe on this CSV file there were also some users that were not meant to be in the cloud. So in order not to delete all users and recreate the CSV file and recreate the users, what we will do here is we will try to filter out only the users which have a a department like technical information or something like that, and we will then remove these users. But let me first show you this filtering. So I will run only this type of commandlet, and this will list me all the users that have in their department the word technical. And we can get a step further, and we can also put a pipeline and select the department. And in this case, we can see that for all these users, their department name is technical readiness. Of course, if we want to see also the names, we can run the same commandlet and display name. And in this case, we'll get an output that will simply list us the display name, you can see here, and we'll list here the department, so we know exactly each user what department name it has. So this is a very, very interesting step. Here, very important, why I wanted to show you this is this where object argument, and this is this is used for filtering purposes. So when we created the user, if you remember, we used the for each argument, which is basically an argument that is meant to process different information. The argument where object is used for filtering purposes. So now we know which are the users that have a department name, also including the word technical. So what we will do right now is we will use the commandlet that we have here in order to delete them. And you can see here, until this is done, I let this run in background. Sorry for that. Okay. What we do here is basically we run the same commandlet that we already ran in order to filter only the object that have a department name containing the word technical. And then we use the pipeline again. So we take all these results and then we handle them over to be processed in what is on the right side of this pipeline. And in this case is the commandlet remove MSOL user, which is basically used to remove users from Azure Active Directory. And since we have a lot of users here that we want to delete, we also use this argument force. And this is very, very important because in this case, I think there were around 50 users that we had to delete. If I didn't use this argument force, for each user, I would receive a prompt asking me if I really want to delete the user or not. So I would have for each user to say yes, 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 and so on. So this is not a task automation anymore. So very important, if you perform this type of actions and want to be very, very quick, don't forget to always use this argument force, since otherwise you will be for each user asked if you really want to remove the user. However, I see that users still get deleted here, so we will have maybe to wait a few more seconds. Now, what I still wanted to briefly discuss with you using this basic commandlet as example is the fact that when you run this commandlet remove MSOL user, all the users that let's say fall within the scope of these commandlets. In this case, all users that have a department name that includes technical. These users will go into the deleted users tab in Office 365. What this means, technically we say that this user is soft deleted. And what this means is while the user is soft deleted, we can always recover the user. And if you run, for example, get MSOL user return deleted users, you will see the list of all the users that we deleted so far, and all these users that are in the return deleted users are soft deleted. So each of those users could be restored. Now it is very important to note that users remain in a soft delete state for 30 days, and after these 30 days those users are completely removed from Azure Active Directory and can't be restored anymore. And from that point, those users won't also be available in this commandlet when you run with return deleted users, because this will display only the soft deleted users. However, you might want as an admin to be sure that everything will be correct, to also delete the users from the recycle bin once they are self-deleted. So this is the commandlet that we use, and I think by now you should be familiar with the syntax. And okay, so what we have here is basically get MSOL user return deleted user, so exactly the commandlet that we ran previously, and then a pipeline, of course. This means, as we said, that this is used in order to present all these users to be processed in what's right to this line. And in this case, what we want to do with all these users is to remove MSOL user. So in this case, we will simply also remove these users from the recycle bin. And this remove from recycle bin argument clearly states that those users should be deleted from this soft deleted state. So all the users will be hard deleted using this PowerShell commandlet. And of course, the force at the end is exactly the same reason why you use it, because otherwise, for each user that we have here, we would be simply asked if we really want to delete this user or not. I will open a new PowerShell session right now, and what I will do, I will also try to connect to this one. No, I think this okay, let's run it again, because I'm not sure it was successful. But in order to check if it was successful, I think it was, what we have to do is get MSOL user return deleted users, and in this case we see that there is no user in deleted users. So this means that all users that are mentioned here were deleted also from Azure Active Directory. So that's how we can do it. And now this part is over with how you can create user in bulk and delete users from Office 365 using scripting. And we will go now to the next part, and the next part regards licensing. And when we want to license to license users using Windows PowerShell, there are some let's say key components that we have to take into consideration. And before we move on to create a script to delete or to assign a certain license type to a certain user, let me go through these basic key concepts that are very, very important. The first one is the account SKU, and you can run this commandlet to display all MSOL account SKUs that are associated to Azure Active Directory. What are these SKUs? These are basically services that you have related to this specific Azure Active Directory. And in this case, I can see that I have 4. So I have AAD Premium, I have RMS Basic, I have this is Office 365 E3, and of course I also have EMS, which is Enterprise Mobility Suite, which includes also Intune and Azure AD Premium. So this is a really important thing to note, all the SKUs. And now also a very important thing is that we can use this, let's say, commandlet count SKU in order to access different other informations that are related to this type of services. For example, if I run this commandlet like this with count, I will, let's say, get all these commandlets counted. So in this case, I can see exactly that I have 4 SKUs. Now, the next very important step is to know that, sure, for example, in Office 365 E3, which is this SKU, we have surely a lot of licenses or licenses for different services that are included in Office 365. So we would also need a way to look inside this SKU and to check exactly what type of services are available in this case. And the first thing that we can do is use the same commandlet or the same syntax, but use service status in place of count. And in this case, I would see all services that are included in these SKUs. And all services are listed here, but maybe I'm not sure or I don't know exactly, okay, I have a list of all services, but which service belongs to which exact SKU. And in this case, I will run another commandlet, and this commandlet is like this. And now I can see only the services that are included in Office 365. And here I have to briefly explain why I use this commandlet like this. So first of all, I also ran this get MSOL account SKU that basically lists all the available SKUs. However, all the services in a certain SKU are seen, or the SKU themselves are seen here in PowerShell, since it's based on the .NET framework, as an array of values. So in this case, I would like to get the MSOL account SKU, and this commandlet returns me an array of 4 values. And in .NET development and in the .NET framework, if we want to access a certain, let's say, element of the array, the counting that we do is always 0 based. So if I want to see exactly all the services that are in Enterprise Pack, so in Office 365 E3, I can see that this SKU is listed at a 3rd place, but the count starts at 0. So this would be 0, this would be 1, and this would be 2 in this case. And that's why we used here the 2. And then, of course, the dot and service status. And this is how we listed all the services that were specific for Office 365. If we use a 3 here instead, what we will see are all the services that belong to the EMS SKU. And let's do it here briefly. And yes, we see here, these are the services that are included in EMS. So this is how you can access the service status of different services in the different SKUs that you might have. And this is a very, very important part, and we will see also why in a few seconds, I think. Okay, now we have seen exactly what we can do to access the exact Office or not the exact subscriptions that we have assigned under our Azure AD. And now let us go to the following scenario that again I encountered countless times with really different customers. Some were big customers, some were smaller customers, but this is a scenario that comes very, very often. And in this scenario, for example, I have the users that let's say belong to the finance department that needs to get a full Office 365 E3 subscription. But then, for example, I have users in the sales department that maybe I would like to only have Exchange Online or only SharePoint Online and so on. However, of course, this type of different combinations are here in order to meet all the requirements of the customers or that the customer might have. And now, based on these requirements, we can create in PowerShell the so-called license options. So these are some variables that we can define, and in which we can say that, okay, for the users that belong to the finance department, they should have this type of services, and users that belong to the other department should have this type of services. And for example, here we would create a variable, a license option variable, and then a new MSOL license option, the account SKU ID we have to provide. And then very important, disabled plans. And here under this argument, we can simply list all the services that we want that we don't want our users to have access to. So in this case, I will create a license of options for sales users, and they will have all services except Sway, Yammer, and project. And I will create this variable also here. So this is very, very easy. New MSOL license options, we have to provide the account SKU ID and to provide, of course, disable plans. So the services that we don't want our users to have. And in the same way, I would create a different license option for the finance department. And in this case, they will have only Exchange Online. So this is why I put here under disabled plans everything besides Exchange Online. And if you wonder from where did I take this information, is from here, from the service status. Because we know this is a project, this is Sway, this is the basic MDM in Office 365, and it's not configured in my tenant, that's why it's not on success. Then this is Yammer, this is RMS, this is Office subscription, so the license to use option. This is Skype for Business. These two are SharePoint, so one is OneDrive and one is SharePoint, and this here is Exchange Online. So from here, from the service status, I was able to define exactly what plans we should have disabled on this license option. So what we have right now is a license option for sales, and we have a license option for finance users. So the next thing we will do is, for example, we have to get all users that are unlicensed and that belong to the license department. For example, doing this, and we can see here these are the users that belong to the to this exact department. And what we did here is the get MSOL user that we use always, and here the argument unlicensed users only, so that we list only the users that don't have a license. And then after the pipeline, as I said, we use for filtering the where object argument, and we filter based on department, and the name should contain sales. And the next thing we would need to do is, of course, we want to store everything also in a variable called sales users. And the same thing we will do for the users that have a finance department, that belong to the finance department. So we will create this variable here. So what we have so far, we know exactly the SKUs. We know exactly what's inside every SKU, and specifically in Office 365 in this case, we have a variable that contains the license option for the sales users, and they won't have Project Sway and Yammer. And we have also a variable containing a license option for the finance users that won't have any of the services except Exchange Online. So Exchange Online will be the only service that they will have. Then we have a variable that stores all unlicensed sales users, and another variable that stores all unlicensed finance user. So in this case, we are ready to proceed and start assigning them a license. So first of all, we will assign a license to the sales users, and this is how we will do it. And till this is done, this was quick, we'll briefly explain you. So first we call the variable that contains all the sales user, and then for each object, so for each object returned by this commandlet, we will set the MSOL user license. We will take the user principal name from the output that comes here, and we use that add licenses. We provide the SKU ID, and very important, we provide the license option, and we provide the sales option that we created. And using the same thing, using the same procedure, we will have all the users. Okay, something. Okay, seems that those users don't have a usage location. Okay, let me briefly check this. Let me first look exactly what's inside this variable, and we can do it like this. So this is let's say live troubleshooting of a script issues. So we can see that we have only one unlicensed finance user. Okay, and this is a problem because I think I don't have in the CSV file enough finance users, and yeah, this is what happened. So in this case, however, now the problem here is basically that I do not have users right now in Azure AD that have a department of license. I only have this user, which was created by Azure AD Connect some time ago, and for this user I don't have a usage location, and that is why I was not able to assign a license to this exact user. So yeah, this is a problem. I won't let's say change the department names of users right now, but because it will get very long. But however, if this user would have had a usage location, then I would have assigned him a license with all services disabled except Exchange Online. So this is how you can perform a license assignment very granularly using Windows PowerShell. And of course, you can create different plans here, so or different license options that include different SKUs. For example, I could create a license option for EMS. And then, for example, if I know that users in a certain department should use EMS, then I would assign them that license option that contains the EMS subscription. So this can be very granularly, and based on the exact requirements of your customer, I would say that everything is achievable as long as let's say we have a consistent way to filter users that need to have a certain type of license or a certain type of service, like I did, for example, based on department. But you can use to filter this based on role, based on location, based on country, based on actually everything. Good. Now we are done also with license assignment. So I would then simply go further to Exchange Online, and I will close this notepad because I don't use it anymore. So in Exchange Online, the basic commandlet is get mailbox, and of course here you can get a list of all the mailboxes that you have assigned in Office 365. And yeah, this is fairly simple. But however, as I told, this is the exact same in Exchange Online as it is get MSOL user in Azure AD. So it's a very basic commandlet that you will use very often. However, when you run get mailbox, you can specify a certain user, for example, and I will specify this then. And for example, I can use also a pipeline and use the format list. And in this case, this is very important for you as an admin, because you get a list of really all properties of this mailbox in Exchange Online. We can see really a lot of information, if it has an archive enabled, when this mailbox was created, if this mailbox is on litigation hold, and for example this mailbox is on hold. We can see who is the owner of the litigation hold. In this case it's myself. We can see the period. Really, we can see here a lot of information also regarding quotas. We know that each Exchange Online mailbox has a quota of 50 gigabytes, and this mailbox is fairly empty, I would say. Then recover deleted items and so on. So really there is a lot of information that you can find when you run a get mailbox commandlet on a specific user mailbox, and using also the pipe format list argument. And we can also see the proxy addresses for this one on a certain point. Yes, here. And user mailbox, this is the type, primary SMTP address. I don't have any secondary. And what you can also see here is originating server. And this is also something that you can use, for example, when some of your customer asks you, okay, but where exactly is my mailbox located? And in this case, for example, we can see that the originating server was AM3 PR08 and so on. And normally we use very specific such type of server names, and you can easily individuate that this mailbox is hosted on a server in Amsterdam. And here maybe this is a little bit easier. Here you have the server name. If you run a simple get mailbox, you can see that, for example, this mailbox is in Helsinki, this is Amsterdam, this is Vienna, Amsterdam again, Helsinki, then Dublin, and Helsinki, and again Vienna. So you can see that my mailboxes are hosted across different Exchange servers across the Europe data centers that Microsoft has, but none of these resources is hosted, for example, on servers in the US or in Asia and so on. So this is, for example, one way to tell exactly where a certain resource is located. Good. Now we have seen that we can run this type of commandlet, but again, one thing that we would need to do is to filter. And we have two ways to filter different resources in Exchange Online PowerShell. And the first one is like we have also done in Azure AD with where object. And let's do it like this. Okay. Okay, custom attribute 15 like and test. So this is a way to filter, and what I did here, I ran get mailbox, and I wanted to only list me the objects that have this custom attribute 15 set to test. And for example, I can do this also like this. Select, let's say, name, alias, and custom attribute 15. Okay. I forgot an E here. It always happens. And in this case, you can see the name, the alias, and this value of the custom attribute 15, and we can see that for all these resources it is set to test. Now this is one way to filter in Exchange Online with this argument where object. Now the other way to filter in Exchange Online is for example get mailbox, and here we also use this filter, and then we use custom attribute 15 like, and okay, test. Okay, something went wrong here. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, maybe there was a certain typo here. Just yes, it was a certain typo because custom attribute should be without the dash. And again, so now we have this commandlet that filters the users, and we have this commandlet that filters these users based exactly on the same thing. But what is the difference between them? And this is very, very simple and very, very useful for you, especially if you have to do this on environments that contain a lot of resources. So this type of commandlet, so when we use the filter argument, what it does the filtering on the server side. So it does the filtering in Exchange Online, and then it really displays the results. If we use the filtering using the where object argument, what it happens is that all mailboxes are imported, let's say, as a result in this PowerShell session, and the filtering is done client side, so within my Windows PowerShell. And that's why when we use the filter argument, it will be very, very quick. And when we use the where object, you notice it's not that quick. And I have right now only 4 different mailboxes that match this specific filtering option. But imagine if I would have 100. The commandlet using filter would be very, very fast, while my commandlet using the where object argument, it will be fairly slow in comparison to the filter one. So in Exchange Online, this does not apply to Azure AD, but only Exchange Online. When you want to perform filtering, then you might want to use this filter, and not to use the where object. Although both these commandlets do exactly the same thing, the one with filter is really, really quick, and the one with where object is a little bit slower, and if you have a lot of resources, then it will be much more slower. So this is a very, very important thing. Now I wanted to go to a next scenario, and for example, I would like to check for all the mailboxes that have full access permissions. And I will use this type of commandlet in order to list. Okay, I forgot. I should do it a little bit different. So it will be get mailbox and then pipe fl and pipe. Then where is the pipe here? And I will only then pass write down this here. And normally, yes, here are the mailboxes. It's still processing. So this basically listed all the resources, the email mailboxes where other users have full access rights. And we can see here in identity, we can see that this is the let's say the owner, and this is the user that has full access on the mailbox of this owner, and this is another one, and this is another one, and so on. So this is a basic way, for example, where you can check this type of permissions. One other thing that I would maybe like to do is, for example, you can do in Exchange Online, you can check exactly the statistics of a certain mailbox. So the quotas and so on. And this is, I also have to run a get mailbox first. And this is also a way, for example, you could create as an admin a script that runs as a scheduled task. And for example, if a certain problem occurs with one of the items, let's say arriving to its quotas, that then you as an admin will, for example, get a notification. And let's do it like this. I will display in this case of mailboxes. Okay, one isn't unique. This is a problem with the alias. And this is no problem. So here we will list all mailboxes. Of course, there are a lot of users that have not logged in so far because they are test users. So you will also get this type of information. But however, you can see here that we can find also the exact quotas that we have, total size, limits, and so on. So this is a certain way that you can do this type of things. And before we wrap up this session, there is only one thing that I wanted to discuss with you. You can see that for both this type of information, I also have a sample script here. And what this script does, and basically the second does the same thing, but it is targeted to quotas, and this is targeted on full access permissions, is that in large environments, if you run, for example, this type of commandlet, and you have really a lot of users or requests that are recurring requests, then you would have problems with what we call the throttling policies, because this is, let's say, a defense option against denial of service attacks. But this is very, very important, because in this case, you as an admin have, when you want to automate certain things using scripting, we have to take this into consideration. And for example, this also comes from a real customer scenario that we had. And what we chose here is to perform different actions based, let's say, on the alias of the mailboxes. So we firstly set a filter with A, and here we get only the resources that have an alias that are starting with A. Then we perform the action. Then we set the filter to B, and then we get all resources that have an alias starting with B, and so on. So this is a very, very useful way in which you could, for example, make sure that you don't perform a certain PowerShell action too often or on too many resources so that your session could get throttled. So this is only a way that you can do this type of filtering in order to assign certain licenses or to do certain actions on users that start with A first, then users that start with B first, and so on. So and in the other script it's exactly the same thing, but only that the action that we do is we get the statistics for each mailbox, but the what we do is the same thing. So we filter, we do this let's say step by step, first for users with A, then with users for B, and so on. So this is something that you might take into consideration just as an example on how you could do this type of things in order to avoid hitting the throttling policies that are set in Exchange Online. Good. As I said, this is basically everything that I wanted to cover today. Let me then switch back to my presentation. And this is the presentation that I want to switch back to. It's loading right now, and I just wanted to switch to that presentation in order to wrap up this session. You have here all the resources because we have set up I hope it will become a huge Office 365 Labs community, and we have a blog on TechNet, we have a Twitter account, we have a Facebook page, and we have also a YouTube channel where we will upload all the recordings for this type of webcasts. So if you missed one or just want to find out some more information, then just make sure you check this type of resources on the blog. We post fairly often on the Twitter account and Facebook page likewise, and of course on YouTube we will upload really all the content that we will generate during this 8th Office 365 Labs webcast that we will deliver in September. So this being said, I would really like to thank you very much for being part of this first webcast of this series. I hope you really enjoyed it and you found some very useful information. We appreciate a lot your feedback, so if you liked this session, but also if you didn't like the session, please feel free to get in touch with us using the community channels that I provided to you, or writing an email directly to me, and just let me know what did you like about this presentation, what you didn't like, and of course also what other topics would you like to have covered within this type of webcast. If we see that you really enjoy them and these webcasts really provide added value to you as an Office 365 admin, then of course we'll keep on doing them, and if you have suggestions on topics that you want to have covered, we will try our best to meet these requirements and to cover all topics that might come from your side as a suggestion. Once again, thank you very much for being in this webcast. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to see you again in the next one. Have a really nice day. Bye.